Hi, my name's Jonas. I was raised to stay quiet, to keep my head down no matter what happened behind closed doors. But that silence shattered at 2 a.m. when my 10-year-old niece knocked on my door sobbing, "Uncle, he's killing Mom." I found my sister barely breathing, blood on her face, her husband spit on the floor, and his family standing over her, smirking. She asked for it. And when I pulled him off her, he turned to me and shouted, "You're nothing, you always were." That night, they finally saw what silence had made me become. But what they didn't know was that I wasn't leaving this time. So, what happens when the one they called useless stops backing down? Do they regret it? Or does the real fight just begin? The pounding shook me out of a dead sleep. At first I thought it was part of a dream, just the wind knocking around an old shutter. But then I heard it again, frantic, panicked, not stopping. I sat up in bed, heart pounding, the kind of fear that doesn't make sense until you're fully awake. I stumbled toward the door, flipping on the porch light. That's when I saw her, Talia, my niece, standing barefoot in the cold, her eyes wide with terror. Her thin arms hugged herself tight, and she was shaking so badly I thought she might fall over. One wrist was red and swelling, and a cheap plastic bracelet dangled from it, broken and useless. "Uncle Jonas," she sobbed. "Dad's beating Mom. She's dying." My gut clenched. I didn't ask questions. I just grabbed the keys off the table, shoved my arms into a jacket, and bent down to scoop her up. "Which way?" I asked, already halfway off the porch. She pointed with trembling fingers down the dirt road toward their house, Maribel's house, my big sister, the one who used to protect me from bullies, who once took a beating herself just so I wouldn't get one, and now I was running to save her. The night was dead quiet except for our footsteps and Talia's ragged breathing. Gravel crunched under my boots. A neighbor's dog barked once and went quiet again. The porch light at the Rodriguez house flickered like it always did. Some things never changed, not even in crisis. "You okay?" I whispered to Talia. She didn't answer, just buried her face into my shoulder. That was answer enough. As we got closer, I slowed. The front door was cracked open. The porch light was off. A sick feeling spread through my chest. I stepped inside. The air stank of sweat, liquor, and something metallic, blood, and then I saw her. Maribel was crumpled near the kitchen counter. Her face was split at the cheekbone, bleeding into her hair, one eye already swelling shut. Her nightgown clung to her like wet paper. Standing over her were two of the people I hated most, Rogan's parents. His mother, arms crossed, her mouth curled in disgust. His father leaning against the wall like he was bored at a funeral. "She brought it on herself," his mother muttered. "Look at the mess," his father said. "You let a woman run her mouth too long, this is what you get." I saw red, but I didn't charge. Not yet. I knelt beside Maribel and gently touched her shoulder. "Hey," I said quietly. "You with me?" Her eyes fluttered. She tried to sit up, failed. And then came the voice I've heard in nightmares. Rogan. He stormed in from the hallway, shirt half-buttoned, reeking of whiskey. "You think you're some kind of hero, Jonas?" he spat. "Filthy woman deserves to be abandoned. Let her rot." "Get out of the way," I said through my teeth, standing up. "She's my wife, not your business." "She's my sister." Rogan pushed me. I pushed back. He staggered, caught himself, then stepped forward again, fist clenched, but I caught his wrist mid-air. He snarled, "You're nothing but useless. Always have been. The forgotten one." The extra mouth. And then he spit in my face. It was hot, disgusting, humiliating. But more than that, it woke something inside me. Something quiet, but burning. I wiped it away without breaking eye contact. "You're done." I turned my back to him, something I never would have dared before, and helped Maribel up. She winced, but managed to lean on me. We made it to the door. Rogan's parents didn't move, didn't help, just watched us like we were dragging out the trash. Outside, I wrapped Maribel in my jacket. Talia clung to her mother's waist like she thought someone might come snatch her away. We walked back slowly, one step at a time. Every few feet, Maribel staggered, and I had to catch her. But we didn't stop. We made it to my place just before the sky began to hint at dawn. I laid her down on the couch, covered her in blankets, and gave Talia a glass of water. Then I sat and sat. Their faces, the smirks, the indifference, played over and over in my head. Rogan's voice, that spit, those words, useless. He'd meant them to break me, but all they did was sharpen me. That night, as I sat in the silence with my niece trembling beside me, I knew his family had finally tasted fear, but it was only the beginning. The sun broke through the blinds like it didn't care what had happened the night before. Light washed over my living room, soft and golden, but it felt wrong, like it was trespassing on grief. Talia lay curled on the couch under the same blanket I'd wrapped around her hours ago. One hand clutched the broken bracelet. She hadn't let go all night. I stood by the window, coffee untouched, staring out at nothing. My eyes were gritty, my jaw tight. Sleep hadn't come for me, only flashes. Rogan's spit on my face, the sick grin of his mother, Maribel's blood soaking into the floorboards. It played on a loop in my head, and always, always, that voice. You're nothing but useless. Funny how those words echoed louder than the screaming. I walked over to the couch, gently brushed Talia's hair back. She stirred, but didn't wake. I wished she could stay here forever, away from that house. But I knew she'd want to go back to her mom. And Maribel, well, she was stubborn. Always had been. By mid-morning, I packed a small bag with essentials, clothes, snacks, a bottle of ibuprofen, and nudged Talia awake. "We're going to see your mom," I said. She blinked slowly, her eyes puffy. "Is she okay?" "She's safe," I said. "But we need to check on her." We walked back to the house the same way we'd come, only this time it wasn't pitch black, and my chest didn't feel like it was splitting open. Still, I kept Talia close. The front door was closed now. No blood on the steps, no broken glass. Like nothing happened. Maribel opened the door before I could knock. She had a towel pressed against her temple, her eyes hollow. "Hey," she said softly, trying to smile. "Thanks for last night." I nodded. "Can we come in?" She stepped aside. Inside, everything had been wiped down. The couch cushions were flipped, the kitchen floor scrubbed. Her in-laws sat in the dining room drinking coffee like it was just another Sunday. Rogan wasn't in sight. Talia ran to her mom, hugging her tightly. Maribel winced but hugged back. Rogan's mother shot me a look. "Well, if it isn't the rescuer." I ignored her. "I'll just take Talia's stuff upstairs," I said, walking past her without waiting for permission. When I came back down, Rogan was leaning in the doorway to the back porch. He didn't look drunk anymore, just smug. "Why'd you do it?" I asked, keeping my voice level. He shrugged. "She embarrassed me in front of my folks. A wife should know her place." My fists clenched, but I didn't move. I wasn't here to swing. Not yet. "You're lucky I didn't call the cops," I said. He snorted. "No one calls the cops on family here. You know that." That word, family, sat like poison on my tongue. What kind of family stands around while a woman bleeds out on the floor? From the corner, his father muttered, "You're stirring up more drama than there is." She pushed him. "She talks too much." I looked at Maribel, who was now sitting on the couch, eyes down, shoulders curled in like she was trying to disappear. "I remember when she used to speak up for me," I said, not to them, but to myself. "When I was a kid and our dad would snap about me being a waste of space, she'd stand in front of me like a shield." I hadn't planned on saying that, but the memory hit hard. Maribel grabbing my arm, dragging me into the bedroom, slamming the door, telling me not to listen to the man screaming outside. Our father always had something to say about how I'd never amount to much, and she always fought back, for me. And now she was silent. Rogan stepped toward me. "You done with your little speech?" I didn't answer. I just stared at him. He held my gaze for a second, then looked away. I walked over to Maribel and crouched down in front of her. "You don't have to stay quiet," I whispered. "Not for him. Not for anyone." She didn't respond. But her lip trembled and she nodded, barely. I stood and looked around one last time. The walls were clean, the furniture tidy, but the rot was deep. This house was a crime scene with fresh paint. "We'll come by again tomorrow," I told her. "Talia can stay here tonight, if she wants." Talia looked at me, unsure. I knelt down to her level. "Do you want to stay with Mom?" I asked. She nodded slowly. "All right," I said. "But if anything feels wrong, you come straight to me, no matter what." Rogan chuckled from the porch. "You think you're her savior now? You gonna be at our door every time we have a spat?" I didn't take the bait. I just said, "Keep your hands off her." Then I turned and walked out the door. But as I stepped off the porch, something shifted in my chest. I wasn't that quiet kid anymore, and I couldn't let Maribel become what I used to be, someone who swallowed every insult, every blow in silence. What none of them knew that morning was that I'd already decided I wouldn't be silent anymore. But decisions mean nothing unless you're ready to face the storm they bring. That afternoon, I was back in my workshop. The scent of grease and gasoline hung in the air like always, clinging to every tool, every bolt, every memory. I had the hood of a truck propped open, wrench in hand, but I wasn't doing much fixing. My hands moved, sure, but my mind was back at that house, with Rogan's smug face, my sister's bruised cheek, and the cold silence of a family that watched it all like it was normal. I tightened a bolt too hard and stripped it, dropped the wrench. It clanged to the floor, louder than it should have been. Across the bench, among the clutter of parts and half-finished projects, lay Talia's broken bracelet. I'd found it in my jacket pocket earlier and couldn't bring myself to throw it away. That tiny pink thing, snapped right where her wrist had bruised. A child's world, cracked in two. I sat down, wiped my hands on a rag, and just stared at it. The words came back. "Oh, you're nothing but useless." He wasn't the first to say it, just the latest echo. I remember standing in that exact garage as a kid, maybe 10, maybe 11, my dad yelling at me because I dropped his socket set. "Dead weight," he called me. "Boy can't hold a wrench without crying." I didn't cry that time, not because I was tough, but because Maribel stood between us before the tears could fall. She didn't yell, she didn't argue, just grabbed my arm, yanked me behind her, and looked our father straight in the eyes. "He'll prove you wrong," she said. "You wait." And now here we were, 20 years later, and it was her who needed a shield. I swallowed hard and picked up the bracelet. It fit in my palm like it belonged there. Light, fragile, broken, and somehow heavier than anything in the room. I wasn't a kid anymore, but I still hadn't said anything. Still played the quiet brother, the one who leaves when things get loud. The one who lets folks handle their own business. That kind of silence kills people. That silence let my mom cry in the bathroom while Dad watched TV. It let my sister grow up thinking pain was just part of marriage. It let Rogan think he could raise his hands and no one would dare stop him. Enough. I stood, grabbed my phone, and scrolled until I found the number I never thought I'd use. Sheriff Lowe picked up after 2 rings. "Jonas," he said, voice flat. "Everything all right?" "No," I said. "I need to talk to you about Rogan." Long pause. "What about him?" I hesitated. My pulse picked up. The right words didn't come easy. "There's been stuff. It's not the first time he's hurt her." More silence. "You got proof?" "She had bruises, cuts. Her daughter saw it." He sighed like I'd asked him to fix a pothole on a holiday. "Listen," he said, "these things are tricky. Domestic stuff. People fight, then they make up. Ain't my place to bust down a door over family drama unless someone's pressing charges." I nearly dropped the phone. "So unless she files herself, you're not going to do anything?" "I didn't say that," he replied, "but it's got to come from her. Otherwise, it's hearsay." I ended the call before I said something I'd regret. Or maybe something I wouldn't. The system didn't care. It never did. I leaned against the workbench, heart pounding, not from fear, but rage. Not just at Rogan, at every grown-up who'd ever turned away, at myself, too. I walked outside, lit a cigarette, and looked at the horizon. The Texas sun was dipping low, bathing the sky in orange and red like it was bleeding out over the hills. A breeze kicked up dust in the driveway, but it didn't cool the fire in my chest. If nobody else was going to stand up, I would. I turned back into the garage, took the bracelet, and put it in my toolbox, right next to my best socket set. It wasn't a trophy. It was a reminder. "This time," I said out loud, voice steady, "I won't be the quiet brother." The room was still, like it was listening, and when I finally spoke, it would cut sharper than any fist. Opportunity came sooner than I expected, at a family gathering meant to keep up appearances. The invitation came in the form of a phone call from Rogan's mother, Helen. Her voice was all sweetness, like syrup over rusted nails. "We're having a little dinner this Saturday, family only. Maribel could use a normal night, don't you think?" Her tone didn't invite discussion. I said I'd come. That Saturday evening, I pulled into the gravel driveway of their ranch house just past 6. The sun was dipping low, painting long shadows across the manicured lawn and white pillars. Their porch light clicked on before I even stepped out of my truck, like someone had been watching from behind the curtain. I parked beside a line of newer cars, sleek, polished. My old Ford stuck out like a sore thumb. I ran a hand through my hair, brushed the dust off my jeans, but it was no use. Grease lingered beneath my nails, and my boots creaked with every step across their perfect walkway. Inside, the air was cool, perfumed with something floral and expensive. The dining room looked like it belonged in a magazine. Long wooden table, silverware lined up like soldiers, cloth napkins folded into swans. Rogan's folks knew how to play their parts. The room buzzed with shallow conversation. Rogan's sister Dana talked about her real estate sales. His father chuckled about golf scores. Everyone smiled too wide, spoke too softly. All of it felt like a play they'd rehearsed 1,000 times. Then I saw her. Maribel sat near the end of the table next to Rogan. Her dress covered the bruises, but I noticed the stiffness in her posture, the way she flinched when someone laughed too loud. She avoided my eyes. Talia sat across from her, moving peas around her plate like it was a chore. Rogan looked up from his drink and gave me a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. Well, thought the underdog mechanic might have skipped the fancy scene. I took my seat without answering. A dinner was served, roast beef, mashed potatoes, something green that looked more like decoration than food. The hum of conversation picked up again. Rogan's father raised his glass. To family, through thick and thin like cracked glass. Dana leaned toward me with a polite smile. "So Jonas, still working with engines all day? Must be exhausting." "It's honest work," I replied. She nodded like that was cute. Helen dabbed at her mouth, then glanced at Maribel. "Darling, how's the arm? I hope it's healing well." Maribel stiffened. "It's fine." Rogan chuckled, too loud. "She's tough. Sometimes too tough." Helen tutted. "Well, you've always had that fire in you, Maribel. Poor Rogan's been so patient." I looked around the table. No one flinched. No one blinked. The words sat there, stinking of blame dressed up in kindness. They knew, every single one of them. They just decided it was easier to act like she deserved it. My jaw clenched. My hands curled beneath the table. I took a slow breath. "You all keep talking like Maribel's the problem," I said, voice low but clear. Forks froze. "But I've seen what goes on, heard the words, seen the bruises. If this family keeps pushing her down, don't be surprised when something breaks. And it won't be her." The silence was instant. You could hear the wind through the chimney. Rogan's face darkened. Helen's lips parted in shock. Dana looked like she wanted to melt into her chair. Then Rogan forced a laugh. "Careful, Jonas. Men who bite above their weight usually choke." I held his stare. "Maybe. But I'd rather choke trying than sit here swallowing the lies." Maribel looked up, just a flicker, but it was the first time she'd lifted her eyes all evening. I stood, slow and deliberate. "Thanks for dinner." Nobody stopped me as I walked out. The night air hit like a slap, but it felt cleaner than anything in that house. I walked to my truck, keys clenched in my hand, heart hammering. The silence behind me roared louder than any scream. I left that table knowing a storm was coming, and this time I'd walk straight into it. The porch light had barely dimmed behind me when I heard his boots scraping the gravel. I didn't turn. I knew that walk, knew the weight behind it, knew the smell of cheap bourbon clinging to his breath before he even opened his mouth. It didn't take long. Rogan made sure of that. "You think you're clever?" he hissed, stepping up close behind me. "Standing there, running your mouth like a man. You embarrassed me at my own table. That won't happen again." I finally turned. The cold air bit at my cheeks, but my voice was even. "Then stop giving people reasons to talk." His face twitched. For a moment I thought he might swing, but instead he shoved me hard in the chest. "You're nothing," he growled. You've always been nothing, a nobody playing hero. I staggered a step but didn't fall. I looked him in the eye. You lay one more hand on Maribel, I said, voice low but clear, and I swear, Rogan, you'll find out just how wrong you are about me. For a beat, silence hung between us, stretched tight as barbed wire. His nostrils flared. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Then he spat on the ground and turned away, shoulders stiff. I didn't watch him go. The drive home was short but heavy, the kind of quiet where even the engine noise feels like a distraction. I didn't turn on the radio, didn't light a cigarette, just let the dark settle over the cab like a wet blanket. My porch light flickered as I stepped inside. Talia was still up, curled on the couch in her pajamas, the glow of the TV painting her small face in soft blues. She muted the screen when she saw me. You're late, she said. I nodded, kicked off my boots. Yeah. She sat up, hugging her knees. Did he yell at you? I didn't answer. Instead, I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the broken bracelet. The same one that had dangled from her wrist the night she came to me, shaking. I placed it gently on the counter. Her eyes followed it. Will you stop him? She asked, almost a whisper. I'll try, I said, and sat down beside her. She leaned her head against my arm. We didn't talk after that. Later that night, after I'd tucked her in and the house had gone still, I stood in the kitchen with the fridge humming behind me. My phone buzzed on the counter. No name, just a number I knew too well. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again. I let it ring out. When the message tone chimed, I hit play. You want a war? Rogan's voice rasped through the speaker, slow and deliberate. You've got one. There was a pause. I thought it was over. Then he added, You think she's safe with you? Keep dreaming. You're just a speed bump. The line clicked dead. I stood there staring at the wall. My knuckles had gone white, gripping the edge of the counter. The refrigerator hummed. And somewhere down the hall, Talia stirred in her sleep. I played the message again. Then once more. Each time the words hit different. Not louder, not sharper, just heavier, more real. I wasn't afraid of him, not really. But I was afraid of what he might do when he felt cornered. And something in his voice told me he felt cornered now. I went back to the living room, sat in the old armchair by the window. The night outside was cold, still. My truck sat under the weak porch light, frost creeping across the windshield. I could feel the weight of it coming, the retaliation, the desperation. He wouldn't let tonight go. I looked at the bracelet on the counter, a child's toy, cracked plastic, pink beads. But to me, it might as well have been a battle flag. I stayed awake the rest of the night, listening. Every creak of the floor, every gust of wind outside made me flinch. Not because I feared for myself, but because for the first time in my life, someone was counting on me to do more than just exist. By sunrise, his promise of war was already at my doorstep. By the time I heard the gravel shifting under his tires, the sun hadn't even cleared the trees. The air was sharp, dust floating in thin streaks across my front yard like the quiet warning of a coming storm. I was at the kitchen sink, rinsing out Talia's cereal bowl, when the sound made me pause. I moved to the window, lifted the edge of the curtain. There he was. Rogan's truck sat at the edge of my drive, engine running, door already flung open like he couldn't get out fast enough. He stalked toward the porch, wide steps, fists clenched, shoulders rolled forward like a man ready for blood. Then came the pounding. Boom, boom, boom. Come out, coward! His voice cracked through the morning like a shotgun blast. Come show these fine neighbors what kind of man hides behind his sister's skirts. I didn't flinch. Just stood there, breathing slow, letting the cold coil of fear settle in my stomach before pushing it back out again. This wasn't unexpected. He never let anything go, especially not when pride was bruised in front of family. Talia stirred on the couch behind me. I turned. She was sitting up, hair mussed, eyes wide. I gave her a nod. Stay here. The moment I opened the door, he took a step back, just enough to size me up. His jaw worked like he was chewing on the words before spitting them out. You think you're tough now? You think one dinner table monologue makes you somebody? I didn't say anything, just walked down the porch steps slowly, closing the distance between us. The cold bit at my arms through the flannel shirt, but I didn't feel it much. He moved first. Fists swung wild, catching me just above the cheekbone. Pain bloomed fast, sharp and bright. I stumbled but stayed on my feet. "You want to fight?" he barked. "Then fight." I steadied myself, wiped the blood trickling from my lip. Then I looked at him, not with fear, but with something heavier. I saw the same eyes that had hovered over Maribel, drunk and hateful, the same mouth that called her worthless, the same hands that bruised her shoulders, split her lip, and I swung back, not to knock him out, not even to win, just to break the cycle. My fist hit his jaw and he reeled, stumbled back, shocked I'd actually done it. "That's for her," I said through my teeth. "And there's more if you ever touch her again." He lunged again, but this time I didn't wait. I blocked him, pushed him back hard. He hit the dirt, spit flying from his mouth as he cursed. Across the road, Mrs. Barlow peeked through her blinds. Another neighbor stood on his porch, phone in hand, but he didn't dial, just watched. They all watched. No one stepped in. No one ever does. And that was the worst part. Not the bruises, not the blood, but the silence. The way the world folds its arms and turns away, like abuse is just a private mess not worth dirtying their hands with. "You done?" I asked him, voice low, shaking. Rogan wiped his mouth, stood slowly, breathing hard. "You're gonna regret this," he hissed. "Sheriff Lowe's on his way. And when he sees this, you'll be the one answering questions." I didn't reply, just stood my ground as he climbed back into his truck, engine revving louder than it needed to. He peeled out, dust curling behind him like a trail of bitterness. 10 minutes later, the sheriff's cruiser rolled up. Lowe stepped out slow, hat low over his eyes. He looked around, saw the scuff marks in the dirt, the smear of blood on my chin. "What happened here?" he asked. Rogan's version had already hit his voicemail, I was sure. Probably said I jumped him, probably played the victim like he always did. "He came to my home," I said. "He put his hands on me." The sheriff nodded once, scratching the back of his neck. "These things, they're messy, Jonas. Families fight. You sure you want to escalate this?" I stared at him. "He laid hands on my sister, on me. That's not family. That's a threat," he sighed. "I'll write it down. Just keep things cool, all right?" As he drove away, I tasted blood again. But there was something else behind it now. Clarity. Rogan had crossed a line this morning. And now, so had I. Crossed the line, I mean, there was no walking it back. My fists had spoken in a way words never could. The bruises on my face healed slower than the damage Rogan's mouth was about to do. By midweek, I found out, through the lies spreading faster than truth ever could. At the gas station, I caught the tail end of a conversation between two retirees near the coffee machine. Her Jonas snapped, punched Rogan without warning. The other shook his head, lips pursed. Jealousy does that to a man. I always said he was the quiet kind. Too quiet. I didn't say anything, just topped off my coffee, smiled like it didn't matter, and left. But the sting settled deep, right between the ribs. In towns like this, truth doesn't stand a chance when the man on the other side has family money and Sunday smiles. The next morning, I got the call. Sheriff Lowe's voice was tight. "Come by the station." "Got a statement here, says you assaulted Rogan without provocation." I leaned against the wall of the shop, trying to breathe through the rising heat in my chest. "You really believe that?" "I believe what's filed. Come by, Jonas. Don't make it worse than it already looks." Worse? I hadn't even started yet. When I walked into the diner that evening, silence followed me like a shadow. The clinking of forks paused just long enough for the whispers to bloom. He's making trouble for family that gave him a roof. Always had that look in his eyes, like something's off. Someone muttered loud enough for me to hear. Maribel married up. This brother's just trying to drag her back down. I didn't stop walking. Just nodded at the waitress and took a seat in the corner, pretending I didn't hear any of it. Talia wasn't with me. I didn't want her near that poison. Later that night, I drove to Maribel's. She met me outside, arms crossed, sweater pulled tight around her like armor. Her eyes darted toward the living room window every few seconds, checking to see if anyone was watching. "You've heard what they're saying," I started. She nodded. "Rogan says you lunged at him like a maniac, that you're obsessed with me, that you're broken." My throat tightened. "And you believe him?" "No." Her voice cracked. "But they do. His parents, the neighbors, even Talia's teachers looked at me funny at drop-off this morning." "Then tell them the truth." She looked away, biting her lip. "You think I haven't tried? Every time I open my mouth, someone's watching, someone's listening. He said if I breathe wrong, I'll lose custody. Those words hit harder than any punch. She wasn't silent because she was weak. She was terrified. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I can't risk her." I nodded once, then turned and walked away before she saw the tears threatening behind my eyes. Back at the workshop, I sat for a long time with the lights off. The air smelled of oil and rust. The only sound was the slow tick of a clock I never noticed before. I thought about packing up, leaving. Maybe this wasn't my fight to win. Maybe all I was doing was making things worse for the very people I was trying to protect. But then I saw it. The bracelet. Still on the corner of the workbench, its broken clasp catching the light from the street lamp outside. The same bracelet Maribel had made Talia when she was 6. The same one she clutched that night on my couch, like it was the only thing left tethering her to something good. That's when I remembered what mattered. Not the rumors, not the sheriff's doubts, not even Rogan's twisted games. It was the girl who trusted me. The sister who once shielded me from Dad's yelling. The silence I'd carried my whole life. I wasn't going to pass that burden to her. I picked up the bracelet, held it in my palm, and whispered into the dark. If they want lies, I'll bring them truth, louder than they can bury. It wasn't just a vow, it was the line in the dirt, and I'd already crossed it. The rest of the town just hadn't caught up yet. The showdown came at night, in front of everyone who once chose silence. Sheriff Lowe called just after supper. Said I needed to clear things up at the station. His tone as thin as the patience left in this town. When I pulled into the gravel lot, the place was already lit up like Christmas. Trucks lined the curb. People stood in clusters, arms folded, eyes narrowed. It wasn't just a meeting, it was a spectacle. Rogan stood near the steps, hand bandaged for effect, face somber like he was heading into a prayer circle. His daddy stood next to him, mouth tight, eyes full of pride. Maribel was nowhere in sight. Inside the station, Sheriff Lowe sat stiff behind his desk while Rogan gave his performance. "I didn't want to press charges, Sheriff," Rogan said with that fake, humble drawl. "But he's unstable. He's got a history of keeping to himself, always brooding. Jealousy does things to a man. I mean, I took him in when no one else would. This is how he thanks us?" He turned to the crowd behind him, neighbors, cousins, old teachers, and shrugged like he was the one who needed comfort. "I don't want trouble," he added, "but I gotta protect my daughter, my wife, my family." The words landed like bricks. The sheriff nodded slowly, his fingers tapping the table. "Jonas," he said, not looking at me, "you got anything to say before we move forward?" My throat was dry, but my hands didn't shake. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the small, worn bracelet. "I do," I said quietly. Rogan's smirk faltered. I stepped forward, holding the bracelet in my open palm. The room went still. "This belonged to Talia," I said. "Maribel made it with her when she was 10. Last month I found it in pieces in my garage. She told me why." I turned slightly, eyes scanning the room. "This isn't about me, or even Rogan. This is about what he did to a 10-year-old girl." A sharp inhale cut through the air, then a small voice, so soft I almost missed it. "He broke it." Heads turned. Talia stood just inside the doorway, Maribel behind her, face pale and trembling. Talia stepped forward, blinking back tears. "He broke it when he grabbed me. He was yelling and I tried to run and he yanked my arm." Gasps, shuffling feet. One woman clutched her chest. Maribel looked like she'd collapsed from relief and shame all at once. But she didn't interrupt. She let her daughter speak. "I didn't want to lie," Talia whispered, "but Mom said if we told anyone he might take me away." Rogan's face flushed red. "You little liar." "Sit down," Sheriff Lowe snapped, rising from his chair. Rogan froze. I turned to face everyone now. Every bruise, every silence, every sideways glance, it was all to protect him, and he's counted on that silence for years, but not tonight. I wasn't yelling, didn't need to. My voice cut clean through the room. Rogan surged forward, fists clenched, eyes wild. "You think this proves anything? You think you can just walk in here and flip the story?" He lunged, but Lowe was ready this time. He grabbed Rogan by the arm and forced him back, two deputies rushing in behind him. "You're done," I said quietly, meeting Rogan's glare. "You called me useless. Tonight, you learned what useless really looks like." Rogan fought against the hold, but it was over. The room had turned. His father's face drained of color. Neighbors looked away, some ashamed, others angry, but no one spoke up for him. As he was dragged outside, shouting threats into the cold night air, I finally let out the breath I'd been holding for years. The bracelet still sat in my hand, not whole, not fixed, but no longer hidden. That night after the station, I drove home under a sky that looked too wide, too quiet. The road stretched in front of me like it had no end, just miles of cracked blacktop and the hum of tires on gravel. Everything outside was still. But inside me, it wasn't over. Not yet. When I stepped into the house, the silence didn't welcome me. It confronted me. There was no yelling, no footsteps pacing, no tension hanging in the air like fog. Just stillness. But it wasn't peace. Not yet. I dropped my keys in the dish by the door and stood for a while without moving. The living room felt unfamiliar, like a place someone else lived in. I walked through it slowly, each step soft, like I might wake something fragile. For years, silence was survival. I kept my head down, kept quiet, did what needed doing. I thought if I stayed small enough, I wouldn't be a target. I thought if I said nothing, maybe nothing worse would happen. Now I knew better. Silence never protected us. It only protected them. 2 days later, the sheriff came by. Rogan had been arrested, formally this time. Charges, assault, child endangerment, obstruction. Turns out, when enough people finally look in the same direction, even men like Rogan can't hide behind old money and family names. The sheriff's voice was clipped, businesslike. No apologies. But he avoided eye contact when he handed me the written statement. Maybe he knew what part he played in letting things fester for so long. Maybe that was enough for now. Word spread fast. In a town like ours, news travels quicker than wind. The same folks who once shook Rogan's hand in church now looked away when his name came up. His father, always puffed up, always proud, started skipping morning coffee at the diner. Funny how quick respect turns to silence when the truth finally sees daylight. A week after the hearing, I stood outside Maribel's house. I hadn't seen her since the night of the station, hadn't spoken more than a word to Talia. I brought the bracelet with me, repaired now, the tiny beads strung back into a circle. Not perfect, but whole. Maribel answered the door with a cautious smile. Her cheeks still showed signs of bruising, yellow fading into olive. She looked tired, but her shoulders weren't hunched anymore. "Talia's in the back," she said, then paused. "You want to come in?" I nodded. We sat in the kitchen. She made tea without asking, like old times, like we weren't standing on the edge of something broken. For a while, we just sipped in silence. Then she whispered, "I almost believed I deserved it. I almost believed that was just what life gave me." I looked up. Her eyes were glassy but clear. "You reminded me I don't." My throat tightened. I nodded once, not trusting my voice. I gave her the bracelet, placed it on the table between us. She picked it up like it was a relic. "It's stronger now," I said. "Like us." Maribel smiled, not a wide one, but real. "You kept it?" "I never stopped keeping things," I said. "That was always the problem." Talia peeked around the corner a few minutes later. When she saw me, she walked in slow, her hand twisting the hem of her shirt. I held out the bracelet. She took it wordlessly and slid it on. It fit snug, like it belonged there. She whispered, "Thank you." And that was enough. Later that evening, I returned to my shop. The place smelled like grease and old lumber. I hadn't touched a wrench in over a week. My hands missed it, but my heart needed quiet first. I sat on the old stool near the workbench, eyes tracing the scattered tools. The walls still held dust from years of doing everything but speaking up. I thought about Dad, how he'd sit right there, chain-smoking and muttering about the world being cruel and us having to be tougher. I'd believed him once. Maybe I even became a little like him, thinking silence was strength, thinking keeping my head down was noble. But silence didn't make me strong, it made me complicit. I picked up a socket wrench, ran my fingers over its cool metal. Then I put it back down and leaned into the quiet. I grew up being told I was nothing, I said aloud to the room. Maybe that's why I stayed quiet for so long. But I've learned something. The walls didn't answer, but they didn't need to. Silence doesn't protect anyone. It only protects the ones who hurt us. I stood, stretched my back, and walked outside. The Texas sky had a way of swallowing you whole. Clouds hung low and still. The wind moved slow, tugging at the hem of my jacket, crisp with that edge that tells you summer's finally behind. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a man who finally told the truth. A man who stood up when it mattered. A man who stopped hiding from his own life. And that was enough. That night, his family tasted fear. But in the end, I tasted something better. Freedom.